Beginning with the 2023 WNBA season, the playing rules have been modified to impose a heightened penalty when a defensive player commits a transition take foul. The penalty for committing a transition take foul is one free throw attempted by any player on the offensive team who is in the game at the time of the foul, and the offense retains possession of the ball. The defensive player who committed the take foul will be assessed a common personal foul. The main factor in identifying a transition take foul is when a defender in transition does not make a legitimate play on the ball as she commits the foul. Other common factors include the defender in transition gives up on the play. For example, she wraps up or grabs an opponent in a non-basketball manner. Or the defender in transition is out of position and unable to make a legal play from her position. For example, she's laying on the floor. Let's take a look at some examples. This first play is an example of a defensive foul that would be ruled a transition take foul this season. The defensive player, Wnba, does not make a legitimate attempt at the ball, and instead she effectively gives up on the play by reaching out with her right arm, making contact with the dribbler, Kelsey Mitchell. Starting this season, this type of contact will result in a transition take foul. Similar to the first play, here we will see another example of a defensive foul that would be ruled a transition take foul this season. The defensive player, Aerial Powers, does not make a legitimate attempt at the ball, and instead she effectively gives up on the play by grabbing the dribbler, Ariel Adkins, with her right arm. Again, a transition take foul will be called on this type of play. Let's look at another example of a defensive foul that would be ruled a transition take foul this season. The highlighted defensive player, Erica Wheeler, does not make a legitimate attempt at the ball, and instead she gives up on the play and bumps into the dribbler, Asia Wilson, in a non-basketball manner. Going forward, this type of contact would be ruled a transition take foul. In contrast to the previous few plays, here we will see an example of a defensive foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul this season. The defensive player, Jackie Young, makes a legitimate attempt to steal the ball from the dribbler, Alicia Gray. In doing so, she makes illegal contact and the defensive foul is correctly called, but since this was a legitimate attempt to play defense and Young did not give up on the play, this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. Another example of a foul in transition that would not be ruled a transition take foul can be seen here. The defensive player, Dejanay Carrington, moves into position to attempt to draw a charge on the offensive player, Natasha Howard. We can see that Carrington is not able to establish legal guarding position in Howard's path, and a defensive foul is correctly called. But since this was a legitimate attempt to play defense by Carrington, and she did not give up on the play, this would not be ruled a transition take foul. Now, let's look at some examples of fouls in transition occurring off the ball. The defensive player here, Arike Ogunbowale, grabs the arm of her off-ball opponent, Yvonne Anderson, in an effort to slow Anderson's progress. While this is a clear defensive foul on Ogunbowale, please note that it is a basketball play, as she has not given up on the play, and therefore this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. Similar to the previous play, here we will again see a defensive foul in transition occurring off the ball that would not be ruled a transition take foul. The highlighted defensive player, Stephanie Dolson, grabs her opponent, Brianna Jones, as they both look to establish position in the post area. And while this is a defensive foul on Dolson, it is also a basketball play, as Dolson had clearly not given up on the play. The correct ruling here is a common foul and not a transition take foul. This next example will show a defensive foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul, as the transition scoring opportunity ended before the foul occurred. The dribbler, Courtney Vandersloot, comes to a stop, ending the transition scoring opportunity, and she is then fouled by the defensive player, A.D. Durr. Because the foul occurred after the transition scoring opportunity had ended, this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. By definition, a transition scoring opportunity only exists when the offensive team is continuously advancing the ball. Watch this next play closely. After the ball is inbounded, we can see the dribbler, Kelsey Mitchell, does not initially push the pace of play. And at this point, the transition scoring opportunity is deemed to have ended. And while she then accelerates just before being fouled by the defensive player, Diamond DeShields, since the transition scoring opportunity had already ended, this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. Again, by definition, a transition scoring opportunity only exists when the offensive team is continuously advancing the ball. In contrast to the previous example, this next play will show a defensive foul that would be ruled a transition take foul, as the transition scoring opportunity had not ended when the foul occurs. The dribbler, Yvonne Anderson, continuously advanced the ball with pace before she is then fouled by the defensive player, Dearica Hamby. Because the foul occurred before the transition scoring opportunity ended, this would be ruled a transition take foul and not a common foul. This final example will show another aspect of the new transition take foul rule. The defensive player here, Natalie Achanwa, immediately fouls her opponent, Beatrice Mompremier, after the change of possession, but before Mompremier has the opportunity to advance the ball. Under the new rule, this would be deemed a transition take foul and would be subject to the heightened penalty. The transition take foul rule is not in effect in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter or the last 2 minutes of any overtime period. The penalty for a transition take foul, 1 free throw plus possession, applies regardless of whether a team already reached the bonus. A team may challenge a transition take foul to review whether a foul was actually committed, but a team may not challenge a transition take foul to review whether the play met the criteria of a transition take foul.